computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
Hello dear listener, and welcome to another episode of Life Through a Prism with your host Rob Tierney, episode 56. Before I read today's article to you, I just want to, for a second, talk about passions. We're all in life, we have passions at things that really we want to achieve, really we would like to do. And as a person with a disability, that it doesn't rule us out either. And for us who want to do something, who have a passion, who have a calling, we have an extra layer of difficulty, hurdles, etc. And sometimes those hurdles and those barriers just seem to never go away. Today we're going to take a look at an article that was on the abc.net.news website. It was going up there on Tuesday the 10th of December. That was the International Day of People with a Disability, and the title of the article is called "I'm Not a Neat Package, the Reverend Redefining What Religious Leaders Look Like." And today we're going to look at Reverend Joedy Meers. So she's not the minister congregations might expect. A violent incident drew me to Christianity. I grew up with cerebral palsy, which meant I didn't really walk unaided until I was 9. And back then I certainly didn't have the equipment that's available now. Our house wasn't conducive to disability, structurally and on a deeper level. My dad was quite abusive. He had a problem with alcohol and a problem with domestic violence. He passed away in 1999, but the mark he left was indelible. I think on some level I really embarrassed him, or he didn't know how to deal with my situation. I aggravated him when I fell over. I aggravated him for simply existing. The incident happened when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I remember being in pain and needing help, so I crawled into my parents' bedroom. My dad must have got mad that I dared to do that, and he just picked me up and threw me back into my room. Luckily, I landed on my bed. Later on, the pain came back. I needed painkillers or a hot water bottle, but it felt risky to return to my parents' bedroom, so I just laid on my bed. A memory of my Catholic nana came to mind. She used to tell me, "I always pray that you will walk and that you will be happy." And so in that moment, I prayed, "Jesus, take the pain away." I felt a warmth all over my body. The pain went away and the room went really bright yellow. The next thing I remember was being woken up by my mum in the morning for school. That incident made me understand that there is a real God, and He listens. When life gives you signs. Another violent incident compelled me, through a series of twists, to pursue religious ministry. At the time, I was a manager at Anglicare, working as a social welfare worker. One day coming home from work, I was driving down a steep hill. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a white car. They had a give way sign, so I didn't think much of it. Seconds later, their vehicle drove through the intersection. I remember my car hitting them, and their car spinning around and slamming into a tree. The young man in the car across from me had blood coming out of his eyes, ears and nose. He turned blue, and his head just slumped onto the steering wheel. I saw 2 men come from nowhere. They were wearing black suits, and I thought, for goodness sakes, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't come to car accidents, do they? I remembered saying to the figures, "Go to that car," because I knew the people in the other vehicle were in trouble. One of them knelt down and said, "Joedy, you're a Christian. How about you pray with me?" The second figure went to the other car. To this day, I really do think they were angels. The call that changed everything. I spent a year and a bit in and out of hospital. Amazingly, the only thing I broke was my ankle, but it broke me as a person as well. The physical injury put my whole gait out of whack. Prior to the accident, despite my cerebral palsy, I used to be able to do all the things my friends could do, just a bit more crookedly. But since the car accident, I now use sticks and a wheelchair. As I age, it's getting worse. That crash had a profound impact, not just physically. About a year after returning to work, I felt a calling to study theology. It hadn't really occurred to me before, but all of a sudden I had this 24/7 nagging sensation. I said to God, I'm single. I've just built a house to suit my needs. If you want me to study theology, you need to provide the resource. The next day I got a phone call from a solicitor regarding my car accident. I was offered an out-of-court settlement. It was smaller than most because I had a pre-existing disability, but it was enough to pay off my house and to pay my university fees. She has nothing to offer us. After receiving my Master of Divinity, I got a job in an Anglican church, working with children and families. I'd help with communion preparation, youth group, children's group, all the things really. They needed me to be confirmed Anglican. Before that I was Church of Christ. So I went through the process. It made me realise I wanted to be a minister. That wasn't an easy path, but in the end I got ordained and received my first placement in Melbourne's West. Most of the congregants are absolutely amazing, but some of them didn't like my clumsiness. I remember on the first day I was called into the office. There was a phone call taking place on the loudspeaker. I was the topic of conversation. At the other end of the line was a retired priest. Not knowing I was listening, he said, "She has nothing to offer us. Why is she here? She cannot even say a little prayer. It's not worth having her." When I heard this, tears started running down my face. That's what they really think of you, I realised. I made it my mission to get to know the retired priest. He became quite sick as he had cancer, so I visited him every week and took him communion. He probably hadn't seen many disabled people before meeting me, so we had something to teach each other. When he was dying, I went to visit him in hospital and put his hand on my head and said, "What God has chosen, let no one put asunder." In his own words, he was saying, "You are called." Even though we'd started out on the wrong foot, I was so thankful to God for him and for his teaching. Finding my way back into ministry. My relationship with the Anglican Church soured a few years after my ordination. Ultimately, I was told there wasn't a place for me. I left my posting and got a job as a case manager dealing with the fallout of the Black Saturday bushfires. I went on to work in family dispute resolution and later disability advocacy. I thought religious ministry was behind me. One day, I went to see my financial advisor, who happened to be a member of the Uniting Church. He asked me why I'd stopped preaching and told me about his community and how they were between ministers. I helped with the preaching there. It was a beautiful congregation in which to heal, but almost inevitably I felt the call to ordained ministry again, but I also felt scared. I had to attend a candidates conference, sit before members of the church and explain why I'd make a good minister. I wasn't sure if they'd accept me. I was pretty mobile at the time, but throughout the day I became stressed and ended up needing my wheelchair. There were trust games where you had to jump in the middle of a circle. I just felt like an idiot, all over again. I brought my sister Vicky for moral support, and when it was time for my final interview, I wanted her in the room with me. I remember saying that I had nothing to offer but myself. I hoped they'd see that as enough. Vicky started crying, and next thing I knew, she was addressing the room. "Hello everyone," she said. "I'm a big fat lesbian, and if this person can teach me all about Jesus, she can teach anyone all about Jesus and his love. She's told me all about it, and I believe her, and other people believe her too." People started crying, and then it finished up with some questions, but I rolled up thinking that I'd made a fool of myself. 2 weeks later, I found out I'd been accepted as a candidate for the Uniting Church. The limits of inclusivity. But that's not the end of the story. I was ordained by the Uniting Church in 2018, then became a minister in regional Victoria. My congregation owned a 1970s 4-bedroom house with narrow corridors. It wasn't appropriate for the quote-unquote chick with sticks, or the quote-unquote rev in a wheelie, especially the bathroom. I found a private rental to suit my needs, but it still needed small alterations. A ramp and extra rails in the toilet. Somehow those alterations took nearly 12 months to complete. I lived there for nearly 2 years before the owner decided to sell. I wanted to stay in the area, but instead I was called or transferred to another congregation about an hour away. Let's just say I didn't have a great experience. After a few weeks I went on sick leave, and I've been a minister awaiting placement ever since. I feel like the church could have done more to help me. I managed to get by. I run a counselling business and do some pastoral care at a nursing home. I'm still a reverend, and I continue to preach for a congregation when they need me. The Uniting Church has a real ethos of being inclusive. They're accepting of gay priests and female ministers. There's a leader who is trans, and there are many ministers who have all sorts of theological views. In 2018, the church affirmed its commitment to being quote-unquote accessible to all people, and to ensuring people with a disability are treated justly. But I think I'm in the wrong minority group. They can be inclusive of anybody that they don't have to spend money on. I know I'm not a neat package. I'm not the minister the congregants might expect. I've fallen through the entrance of the church, knocked things over, dropped Eucharist wine all over Vicar's clothes, and stuttered my way through too many sermons. And yet, in that, there is authenticity. It's uncomfortable when somebody who is more awkward than you wants to lead and serve you. It's confronting, and it doesn't look polished. But wasn't that exactly how Jesus intended? He wasn't of the nobility, he wasn't credentialed. He was probably dark-skinned and hung out with wharfies, fishermen and sex workers. I often say to people, if God can choose me, and if God can do great stuff in my life, he can do great stuff in your life. When people think that the church is superior or irrelevant to the rest of the world, they need to hear that. There you go, listeners. One person's story of struggling through diversity and pursuing her dream, her vision, her calling. Where does that leave you today, listener? I know for me, I'm still struggling with my calling, trying to find that, trying to work in what direction I need to go just to fulfill who I'm meant to be. How about you? What are your struggles? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? Would love to have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Until next time, dear listener, take care and bye for now.